Each year we get together to meet specialists in various sectors that inform us on trends that'll be impacting our businesses in the future, as well as the upcoming opportunities in the coming year. This morning we welcome Mark Ells, Barnstable Town Manager, Timothy Whalen, Massachusetts State Representative, Christy Sanatore, the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission, Bert Talman, President of Cape Cod 5, and Alyssa Magnotta, the CEO of the Housing Assistance Corporation. I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this program and most of the Chamber's events, Cape Cod 5. We truly appreciate your support that you continue to give us. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our Board of Directors for their support. Looking forward to this year with so many programs and events. Our Board of Directors who are here today, Allison McSorley of the Doubletree by Hilton, Judy Crocker, Make Your Own Marketing, our Vice Chair, Matt Pitta, the Davenport Company, is our new Board Chair, Rob Reisner, Cape Cod 5, Todd DeLuca, Boston Business Technology, our past chair and also the former president CEO. Warren Rutherford, the Executive Suite. And special thanks to Michelle Resendez, our ambassador, Cape Cod Broadcasting Media, who is helping us this morning at the reservations and also PowerPoint presentations this morning too. So thank you so much. I'd like to acknowledge my chamber colleagues here in attendance today. Maria Leva from the Cape Cod Canal Regional Chamber, Radu Luca from the Provincetown Chamber, and Mary Vilbon from the Yarmouth Chamber. We're all part of this Lc3 Group. Now, what is an Lc3 Group? It's not a cult. It's not a bad name for a heavy metal band or a name for a professional wrestler. However, I was informed there is a professional wrestler named EC3, but there's no affiliation. The Lc3 Group consists of the executive directors of each of the 15 local Cape Cod chambers. We all recognize the need for a local approach to regional issues who strive to effect change on the local level. The goals are to leverage best practices to help each other, our members, and area businesses to become stronger, more effective, and more efficient. This pandemic has just strengthened the bond of this group. We have been supportive of each other and helped coach one another through the darkest times to operate a Chamber of Commerce. You could call us a Chamber Anonymous group. They've been vital to me as I complete my first full year here at the Hyannis Chamber. Chambers are evolving, learning, and trying to help to the continued challenges of operating and starting a business. Thus, we continue to help our members expand their networks of colleagues and customers, tap into government relationships, and help increase brand awareness. We take the time to help you improve your business skills through seminars and shared business services. We invest in your community. We help work and partner with you. The Hyannis Chamber has started this year with a new focus and passion and is continuing to adapt to challenges ahead. Thank you so much for attending today. Hope you enjoy our speakers. Spring is just 19 days away. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mark Ells, the Barnstable Town Manager.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me here. It's wonderful to see you all face to face, no masks. When I went through and thought about what I would say today, I reflected back to 2020, I think, when last time I was here. And wow, what a different world it was then. And what we've experienced over the last 24 months. And thank you all for your patience as you've watched certainly the town of Barnstable and its municipal government transition through this situation. It wasn't just a health crisis. It was an economic challenge. It was a social change for us. And I think we've come out of it well. And I'm glad to see us all here together today, healthy, safe, and hopefully prosperous moving into 2020. I'll share with you a little bit about what we see from the municipal side. And know that we're there for you. Know that you can reach out to us and communicate with us. And we never closed our doors, quite honestly. The doors just changed. They became remote and contactless. And we shifted about 450 people in 3 weeks from old traditional municipal to remote functional. And during that period provided more permits, more service than we've had in our history. So it was quite an interesting transition, and I'm sure it has been for all of you as well. It's very interesting coming back to work, too. I think we have to teach people how to play nice again. They're used to being in this closed environment, And, and obviously that's very different than when we all come back together. I don't have to say this to you, but I use it anyways. You know, Barnstable, Mass. is the center of activity for southeastern Massachusetts. We're not only located in the middle of Cape Cod, but we're a diverse, complex community that not only deals with commerce and healthcare and transportation and education and government and arts and cultures. We deal with a complex environment that we live on top of. And the truth is, the reason we're all here is because of that environment and that quality of life that we sought to move to Cape Cod. And in many cases, either live or do business in Barnstable. And we need to be mindful of that in everything we do, and we need to be good stewards of it in our personal life and in our professional life. And I thank you all because you are, and you do. And the people that I work with every day, our town council shows that in its leadership and in its strategic plan, and the residents that I serve every day certainly understand that. We have a really well-educated population down here relevant to who we are, what our place is in the market, and what we need to do more importantly in the future to sustain this, to continue being a center for southeastern Massachusetts. We're also an international destination. A lot of people forget that. I meet people from all over the world coming here, certainly all over the state of Massachusetts. It's funny, I was in my family's, part of my wife's family's from mid-state Illinois, and they asked me if I knew where Four Seas ice cream was. And I said, yeah, I live like 3 houses down from it. And they said, well, we know where that is. And I'm like, you're from Taylorville, Illinois. How do you know where Four Seas ice cream is? So we're on the map, people, and I think it helps us all every day in what we do. I want to point out to you, get to brag a little bit, and it's not my doing, but I do get to serve in the lead capacity. Barnstable is a solid financial community. You don't see us having many of the challenges that other communities have because past leadership, I see Warren Rutherford sitting out there. Hi, Warren, it's good to see you. And others who followed Warren through to myself have put in place sound fiscal policy. Our leadership in our town council recognizes this and continues it in the way that we do business. We remain, and I just got the report yesterday that our next bond issue will be AAA as well. And the reason we get that in Barnstable, we have a strong economy, we have strong management, we have flexibility and budgetary performance, strong liquidity, debt to contingent liability, and a lot of you financial people will appreciate this perhaps more than others, and institutional framework. So we get looked at nationally, and we get rated #1 over and over again. That is no accident. That is our leadership. That is the people who lead your community. It's actually Mark Mill, too, our finance director. He's the best, in my opinion, probably the best in the country at what he does. So that puts us in that puts us in a very positive position as we try to move forward with many of the challenges that a community that's recognized domestically and beyond as a destination. I always say to the people, I spend time with each of my employees, meeting them for an hour when they join our organization. We meet a lot of times, but I do an orientation with them. And I talk with them and I say, realize we have residents. Some live here year-round, some live here part-time. We have visitors. Think about it. Many people, 1 week of the year, they go away and they choose our community. Do you know how important that is? That's significant. When they come here, it has to meet their expectation, okay? Keep that in mind when we go out every day and serve Barnstable, serve Massachusetts, and beyond. And our employees step up and they do that, and I'm very proud of their performance and what they do. Our council, through strategic planning, helps us to establish priorities, because you can imagine that I'll go over it in a minute, but we're a fairly large organization. I might surprise you at how large we are in a minute. But what are we focused on? We're focused on protection of our town's quality of life, unique character, engagement of our citizens, and policies that respond to and anticipate the needs of our community. You all lead in your respective areas. You know how important a strategic plan is. Without it, you don't focus. Our community focuses on this. Our leadership establishes it every 2 years. It is known by every employee what our mission, what our purpose is. And then we try to fulfill it with the resources and the policies that we are given from that leadership. Give you a little feeling, growth on property value went up 8.7% in 2022. Now that's typically 2 years behind. We're going to see growth, even though we may see a flattening in the economy, in property values in Barnstable. We expect that. We've seen it again. We expect to see it at least 1, maybe 2 more years, but we are seeing a little bit of a flattening. We're seeing an increase in the year-round population. A lot of that isn't new growth, though. A lot of that is infill in properties that were seasonal in nature, meaning people came down and used it as a second home, or people used it for other purposes. But we are continuing to see that. I've already talked with you a little bit about what we're focused on, but quality of life, but built into that is financial stability, which we've proven. And improved communication. Lynn Poyon's here with me, my Director of Communication. You probably know Lynn. She does a fantastic job for us. And that world has changed in the last 24 months. Everybody relies on remote ability to communicate now. It was always there. It was always a possibility. They asked me, will Zoom go away? No, Zoom's not going away. It's going to be a part of business. Will remote go away? No, remote's not going away. We're going to be remote and contactless from here on out. And people like Lynn and her staff help us do that and communicate better and more effectively with our public. On the public side, they want this. They want to be able to do both now. They don't want to have to be there in person, but they want to participate. We've got to be able to accommodate that, and again, engage our public. That's every conduit through which we can access them, we need to be able to use. So I'm pleased at the job Lynn and her staff and our organization does. Down the bottom line here, last year we did $82 million in capital. We range between 50 and 100 million a year in capital. Operating budget of almost $250 million in the town of Barnstable. People don't think of us that way. They don't think of us as having the 4th largest roadway system in the Commonwealth, behind Boston, Springfield, and Worcester. They don't think about it. Largest land area, 2 coastlines, more marinas than most communities in our Commonwealth. You can begin to go into the many assets, over 1,100 assets the municipality holds. Complex community. And we live on top of the water we drink. Think about how complex, everything we do impacts the most important resource. Without drinking water, we're in trouble, people. We're in trouble on every level. Complex community to do business in, to live in. That's why it's so important that we engage our public and they're educated and they know the issues and they can participate. Because without them, we can't be successful. Massive infrastructure projects going on. One of the largest in the Commonwealth. Sewer expansion over the next 30 years. Would have been nice to have started 30 years ago. Different funding mechanisms back then, most of it paid for by federal and state. Those options went away 2 decades ago. We're funding this. We get some help. Thank you, Tim Whalen. He's been tremendous in his support of us, as well as the Cape delegation. But we're moving forward with this. You see lots of construction. I'm sorry. I know it's an inconvenience. You're going to have to stay away from Willow Street and Route 28. That's a biggie that's going to start up this spring. So if you're in that area, call us. We'll try to work with you. But you see it at Covell's Beach. You see it along Route 28. This is all different projects, but we have tremendous investment in infrastructure in Barnstable over the next 30 years. Unfortunately, some of it is behind, okay? It's a challenge. Couple of projects, Strawberry Hill Road area, Route 28, sewer main expansion. But basically, what are we doing right now? We're either in design or in construction, going from about where CVS is on Route 28 and Strawberry Hill Road, all the way out to where the old Mills Elementary School is with a main. That's the backbone of the sewer. 5 years from now, that's going to be in the ground. And then we're going to expand into all the neighborhoods that we need to over the next 25 years, okay? That's it. Major pump stations. We're talking about $150 million of worth of infrastructure investment right there in pump stations and in putting that backbone down Route 28. What else are we doing on the operations side? You know, life's gotten more complex. We do have more police officers out there working in and around town and in the downtown area. We've got more demand from our seniors and our youth. The youth want to stay here, the seniors want to be here. And we try to provide them the programming they want. Lots of water quality and wastewater initiatives that I talk about. Regional improvement projects. We work with Christy and her group all the time on what are the priorities, not just for Barnstable, but for Barnstable County. We're the center of it, and we need to make sure that we're ready to serve in that capacity. So we work with our partners in the Cape Cod Commission and Barnstable County government all the time. We coordinate regionally. We're looking at improving. We're in the service business, and a lot of times municipalities don't focus on customer service. They've done business the same way. We've transitioned over the last 5 years, and the last 2 have been interesting to go from face-to-face to remote. So that's been an interesting challenge, and now we got to reintegrate, as I started with. So always a challenge out there, but we're up for it, and the people we bring on board are aware of it, trained in it, and are going to do an excellent job in it. We continue to add technology. Thank you, the federal government and certainly our state in supporting us with this. Most of the funding so far that's come in from ARPA or CARES Act has gone toward this technology so that we can do our jobs better, quicker, more effectively, and we can do them remotely. That's where a lot of focus has gone for us. Now we're going to put it into infrastructure. Pretty much everything we get is going to go into water, wastewater, housing, probably look at broadband, some other factors there. And then I've already talked about communications. Look at our website. I said earlier, we're not seeing a lot of new growth. We're not. I just show you over a little more than going on 2 decades here. We've had some highs, some lows. They follow economic trends. We went up in FY18 or fiscal 18. And now we're back down. We're projecting about 750,000. So we're seeing growth, but we have record numbers of permits. Most of them are renovation, modification to existing. Some of the biggest growth we're going to see, one of them, Vineyard Wind coming in. That's about $1.2 million in new growth in itself. When that's fully built, they're talking to us about a phase 2 and a phase 3. So they could very well be the biggest taxpayer in the town of Barnstable at some point. Going to be 3 different companies. It's Vineyard Wind. So if you hear about Vineyard Wind, Park City Wind, and Commonwealth Wind. So if you hear those 3, it's the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the project. But it's interesting who our biggest taxpayers are in Barnstable. Motor vehicles, a lot being sold, a lot of excise tax still being generated. Other major categories of revenue, our permits are still up, beach revenue's up. Interesting, we got to get back to the traditional room tax in the sense that not the tax, but the occupancy. Hopefully people are considering that. I'm hearing that everything's full. Let's hope a lot of that full goes to the traditional hotels, motels that we have on Cape Cod. Meals and room tax as well. So housing, we all can talk about that. It's a major issue. Major projects, actually both pending before the Cape Cod Commission now, not before the town in either case. Lots of potential units, none of them through permitting yet. Neither of them before the town right now. The first one has been, and now back to the commission. Second one with the commission, not to the town yet, though there's a lot of discussion about this second one. Fully permitted construction, yeah, we've added 44 units and 4 affordable. And complete and occupied 362 and 36. So yes, that's good, but our housing challenge is much greater than this. We need to start thinking about multiple ways to do this, including more housing. But I was having a discussion with Matt the other day about different opportunities to perhaps bring in workforce from other places off Cape. And I know the economics of that hasn't made a lot of sense. Remote has helped a little bit. Certainly 20 to 25% of my workforce is going to be remote. It wasn't 24 months ago. So that opens doors to access human resources. But we need to be creative here because there's going to be the demand, especially in the service areas. And I don't know that the people who will work in those capacities will be able to afford what's occurring on Cape Cod. I've been here I've been with the town 32 years. I've been on the Cape 40 years, and I've seen a huge change, okay? And I don't think it's going to reverse itself. I think it's going to continue to trend the way that it is. So housing will remain, affordable housing, workforce housing will remain a challenge for us. I think it's a major point of interest, and I think we'll hear about that in a minute. Lots of new initiatives, well, not new, but advanced initiatives with affordable dwelling units and looking at the zoning in the downtown. Please participate in all of this. We're doing a local comprehensive plan update. Please participate if you live in Barnstable. Today's the last day to apply. Please participate in it. It makes a difference. I've been trying to engage our community, but our youth in our community, because it's their future. We get to be the stewards, but it's their future. They need to be at the table. They need to know how it's going to look 10 or 20 years from now if they're going to make decisions to stay here. So please consider this. Lynn Poyon's here if you want to find out where you can get the application, but you got today. And then finally, arts and culture and doing business in Barnstable. This is all on our website, but we encourage you to take a look at it. Share with us. Areas that you see that are important, suggest that we expand on them if they're not there, okay? But we try to engage all in what we do and how we serve the community of Barnstable. So, and I'm privileged to be the town manager, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this morning. Thank you.
Next up, Christy Sanatore, the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission.
All right, good morning. Thank you. It is so nice to be here in person. I think I've spent the last couple of years behind a Zoom screen, and so it's just really nice to be back and interacting with people in person. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the Cape Cod Commission. Most of you are really familiar with what the Cape Cod Commission does. But of course, we're the regional planning agency for the Cape Cod region, all 15 communities within Barnstable County. So a lot of our focus is on balanced growth. So really looking at protecting those unique qualities that really make the Cape a special place and balancing that with economic progress. And so much of our regional planning is based in our regional policy plan, really guiding growth into areas that can accommodate additional growth and away from areas that need to be protected. But of course, that covers a lot of different areas, and our Cape Cod Commission Act is broad. And so we have a regional transportation plan, we have an economic development strategy, we have a new climate action plan for Cape Cod, and a variety of other regional plans that really cover a lot of the focus areas and a lot of the sectors in the region. But today I want to focus a little bit more on data. So a lot of what the Commission does is provide resources and provide data and information to the Cape Cod communities, to decision makers, so that they can be informed about the types of decisions that need to be made. So I want to focus in three broad areas, really talking about the people of the Cape, really some of those population shifts that we're seeing pre-COVID and during the pandemic, and now where we are hopefully moving into more of a post-COVID era, and then really talk a little bit more about the housing crisis that we're seeing in the region, and talk about the economy, and talk about some of our business resilience strategies. So Cape Cod population changes. I want to talk a little bit about the census data that we just had released. And so here you can see the population. It's cut off a little bit on the screen there, but from the 2010 census through the 2020 census, we saw an increase in the Cape's population. So it's about a 6% increase in the number of people here on the Cape. And of course, this outpaced some of the projections. I think most of the projections that we saw, including those from Massachusetts Department of Transportation and other economic institutions and analysis, really did indicate that we might be seeing a decline in our population. So there's probably a variety of reasons that we did see this uptick, but we did have a significant increase in the number of people that are here in the region. So if you take a look at that on a map, we can see here those upper and mid-Cape areas certainly saw an increase in the number of residents to the region, with the Outer Cape towns not seeing as many, but if we look at that in terms of percentages, those are some significant numbers that the Outer Cape towns are seeing. And so here, if you take a look at those changes from 2010 to 2020, you can see there the net changes in some of those towns in the mid and upper Cape were significant, and the town of Sandwich actually saw a decrease in the number of residents during that 10-year period. So also the census has been tracking demographic diversity, and so we can see here there was actually a significant change in the demographic diversity between 2010 and 2020, nearly doubling that percent population of non-white residents in the region. We did see that primarily those increases in non-white were in the mid and upper Cape regions, but certainly this is tracking a lot of the regional trends that we're seeing as well. So talking a little bit about housing, of course this interacts with the changes that we're seeing in population here, but between the 2010 and 2020 census, there was a reported about 4,600 new units of housing. I would say about almost 80% of those were actually single-family homes in the region. And so you can see where those changes were in the number of housing units across the Cape. So vacant housing units is a proxy for seasonal. And so here what we're seeing is about 37% of the housing units across the Cape are seasonal homes. And this is actually a slight decrease of about 1,000 units. And again, to kind of go back and reiterate what Mark Els was suggesting, we are seeing that more people were turning some of their more seasonal homes into year-round residences. So we're trying to track those trends and get a better sense of if that's going to be more of a longer-term trend or not. So you can see here that percent breakdown of housing units that are considered seasonal, with more of the Outer Cape towns certainly seeing those higher percentages. So let's look a little bit at the regional economy. And so looking at the unemployment values, certainly they're not showing up on your computer screen here, but you can see that significant jump from April of 2020 of the unemployment rate being nearly 22%. Back down to more of the norm, what we were seeing pre-pandemic and those unemployment rates. This is one of the most interesting, and we're not seeing these values here for some reason. It must be the coordination between the two programs. But what we're seeing in January of 2019, those values were just under $300,000 for the median sales price for a single family home. And so that number you can see has climbed significantly, where we're in January of 2022, we're looking at about $659,000 for the median sales price for a single family home on Cape Cod. At the same time, you can see that bottom line in the darker orange color. This represents the inventory, the number of single-family homes that are for sale in the market. You can see that number in January of 2019, pre-pandemic, just around 1,700 units that were for sale. That number as of January was about 231 single-family homes for sale in the region. So we've got that significant climb in rates and certainly sales prices, and that decrease in the number of units that are actually available to the market. If we look at this in terms of town by town, and again, this is a snapshot, so this is just January of 2022, we can see some of those significant sales prices. So certainly some of the Outer Cape towns have some significant numbers in terms of their median sales price for homes in that area. And so we need to look too at affordability. So certainly we know we have a lack of homes for sale in the market, but we need to look at affordability. So the cost of home ownership, even pre-pandemic, was really difficult and unaffordable for many of the year-round residents, many of the residents that are earning average wages on the Cape. And so if we were to look at 2021, the median sales price for a home was about $600,000. The estimated yearly income that would be needed to afford that median sales price home was about $151,000, really not necessarily representative of the wages that are being earned by most workers on the Cape. Another contributing factor to some of the housing challenges that we have are the prevalence of single-family homes. So we lack a diversity of the types of housing units on the Cape. So 83% of the housing on the Cape are single-family homes, which leaves very little diversity in terms of other types of units and other sized units that may be more affordably priced to others that may be interested in different types of sized units. So one of the things that we're doing at the Commission, we're trying to get a sense of the people that are here, the people that have moved here during the pandemic, and get a sense of what their short-term and long-term interests are in potentially staying on the Cape. So we saw an uptick, obviously, in residential sales over the course of the pandemic. So we issued a new homeowner survey last year for people that purchased a home between April of 2020 and May of 2021. That was nearly 6,000 new home purchases. And so we wanted to get a sense of some of their shorter and longer term interests in their property. And so what we found was, of the respondents, many were over age 55. Many had a significant household income of over $150,000. Many had graduate professional degrees. Certainly not too interesting, I think. But what we did find was that the significant home price purchase, most of those purchases were between the $500,000 and $750,000 range. We also wanted to get a sense of some of the employment status of those that were purchasing these new homes in the region to find out if they were going to be also looking for new employment on the Cape. And most of those were employed, 69%. And of those employed, many worked for an off-Cape employer because of the nature of the remote work. So trying to get an understanding of how they might be contributing, these new homeowners might be contributing to the local economy. 90% indicated that they would be using their property over the next 20 years as their primary residence. About 19% indicated that they may be interested in using that as a short-term rental. So we're trying to collect the best available information and data to really help us quantify and some of these new impacts that we're seeing in the population changes and the housing shifts that we're seeing to help us with future regional planning. Not only do we need to advocate for additional resources to be brought to the region for infrastructure needs, but also taking a look at future planning initiatives at the Commission as well, and so how we can best address some of these challenges that we're facing due to some of these increases. So at the Commission, over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be embarking on a regional housing strategy. I usually start some of my slideshows with a map series that really indicates the parcels that are developed in the region with the protected open space. And then layering these, it shows that about 86% of our land mass on the Cape is either already protected or already developed, which really leaves very little left to either protect or develop in the future. So focusing our growth and development in areas that are already supported by adequate infrastructure and away from areas that need to be protected is important. So putting a regional housing strategy together that can be comprehensive enough that it can work in tandem with our regional policy plan is something that we'll be working very collaboratively and closely with the 15 communities across the Cape over the course of the next year. And providing a decision support tool, because a lot of these decisions do still need to be made locally, and we want to make sure that the local communities have an opportunity to provide that input and provide that focus in those areas that they determine should be moving forward. And so I just want to close with a tool that we've developed at the Commission. This is a new website we've just released. It's called Data Cape Cod, and you can visit datacapecod.org. And it's really an opportunity for a lot of our regional data sets to be housed in one place. And so it's an opportunity for you to go in and interact with the data. We've categorized it into people, places, and economy. And there are over 20 interactive dashboards that you can use to really get the best available information and data to support some of the decisions that we'll be continuing to make here in the region. So again, that's datacapecod.org. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to share some data and some highlights, and I look forward to answering some questions. Here's my contact information if anyone has anything specifically after. So thank you.
I wasn't sure which order we were going in, and I'm so thrilled to follow Christy because she always has such good data, and we really go through her data and scour it and try to make sense of what she's reporting is happening and what we're seeing happening in our office every day with our clients. So I'm going to try not to duplicate what Christy said. I'm going to try to give you some tangible, real-world stories about the people that we see and what's happening in our office, and try to do my best to forecast what we're seeing coming based on the information we're getting from our clients. So we have a staff of about 5 people who work with people who are literally homeless, living in encampments or in their cars. And their caseload has more than tripled in the past 2 years. And so what that means is these are not your typical homeless people that we see on Main Street that some people find annoying or interrupting their business practices. These are regular people. Many of them are employed. A father and his young daughter living in a car, in parking lot, moving around from parking lot to parking lot, afraid to come into shelter. He makes too much money, so he wouldn't even qualify for a homeless shelter, but there's literally no housing. He loves his job, so he's not willing to leave the Cape yet. We opened a temporary shelter for the winter because the temperatures were so low, and our homeless shelter here is at capacity. So there was no place, right? There's no temporary winter shelter, and so I went in 2 weeks ago to check on the situation and the quality and the food, and are they keeping it clean and what's happening. And I met an 87-year-old woman. 87 years old, lived in an apartment, her place sold, and she had nowhere to go. And she was living in her car, and one of our outreach workers found her. She wasn't alone, though. These were all, many of the people in the shelter are working, they have pets, they have families, their apartment sold, and they have nowhere to go. They're trying to figure out how to stay on Cape Cod, right? It is not 1 or 2 people, it's hundreds of people that we're seeing coming in. We have a front door where we give out emergency rental assistance. And every single day, regular people that are working, that have lived on Cape Cod, many have lived in the same place for 10, 15 years. Their rental sold, their house sold, they have nowhere to go, and they have 30 days to get out. They're coming to us looking for a place to live. Do we have any resources? Do we have any money? Do we have anything we can do to help them be able to stay in their home on Cape Cod, continue working where they work, continue participating in their community? Those numbers at our front door have skyrocketed. We usually give out about $150,000 of emergency rental assistance. I'll show you on the next slide. Shockingly, we've given out over $7 million. Like, it's the demand and the need is beyond fathomable. We run 3 family shelters. They're fully at capacity. We have rental vouchers for people that need long-term assistance with that affordability gap that we all know, and we heard from Christy, right? That people don't make enough money to afford either a place to buy or a rental. So there are a lot of people that are living cost-burdened and need that assistance just to stay living here. We have a energy and weatherization department, so we have the contract for low-income families who want to weatherize and add insulation to their home to keep their utility bills down. And we build housing, we have a real estate department. What else do we do, Anne? We have so many, we have the full gamut of housing, from people who are homeless to people who are looking to purchase, and everything in between. And what we like to say is that if we don't do it, we know who does do it. So we're the front door, we're the regional housing agency, and we're the front door for many of the government contracts and resources that are here on Cape Cod and available on Cape Cod and the islands. So I wanted to show you this because these are the stats during COVID of the towns where we gave out money, the number of people or number of households we were able to help in each of the town. And like everybody else during COVID, we had to pivot and become a virtual company overnight. I think it was March 13th, we realized, oh my God, this is real. we've got to go home and get everybody laptops. But we kept our doors open. And it was very important to us to really, we knew people were going to be hurting, and we knew that there was going to be some kind of impact on housing and wages pretty quickly, especially for service industry. And we anticipated construction, but that didn't seem to pan out. They were very busy during this time. And our Chief Development Officer, Ann Van Vleck, started a fund to be able to provide rental assistance to people who were in need. And then we were able to subsidize that with some ARPA funding and government funding. So that's why we were able to give out over $7 million in about 2 years. And we were able to reach people in the hardest areas, P-Town and Truro and Wellfleet. We don't usually have a lot of penetration from those towns, but because we went virtual, we were able to do all of our applications online, see people online, virtually, get signatures through DocuSign. And so a lot of the regulations that we usually have to follow of that face-to-face wet signature contract was relieved during COVID. And we're hoping that it will stay that way because it really helps with access and people participating. But these numbers are shocking, and we don't see them changing. We don't see the demand going down. And I know Christy already talked a little bit about cost burden, but I wanted to kind of put it in another perspective, right? So we know that there's about 165, housing units on Cape Cod. These are this is from 2019, by the way. So some of this is not going to match up exactly with Mark's numbers when you see my pipeline numbers or Christy's numbers, because I'm using a little bit older data. But it's still representative of trends and what we're seeing and what's happening. And of those 165 housing units, only 19,000 of them are year-round rentals. All right, that's about 11% of our housing market are year-round rentals. And that's why we are so focused on year-round rentals, because we have so few. Pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, we had so few in the marketplace. And in that, during COVID, we hired an economist and did a study on the rental inventory on Cape Cod, and we have less than a 5% turnover of rentals in a year. That means about 70 become available in a year, right? And that means that in a healthy market, you would have 35, 50% of your housing would switch over. That means there's enough inventory and movement in your market that people are moving up, moving down, moving out, moving around. People don't move. They move into a place and they don't move. I'm sure many of you who either rent or have friends know that when you have a place and your landlord is willing to retain it as a year-round rental, that you want to stay put, right? So the problem is that 50% going into COVID, over 50% of the renters were cost burdened to begin with. So that you add any kind of upset in the economy, any kind of upset in childcare costs or additional costs for gas or transportation or anything, right? They're not even living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have the wherewithal for the savings and for any kind of emergency situation to hit. And what we're seeing now coming into our office are foreclosures. We're starting to see the people that did have the savings, that now they're coming in, that their savings is gone and they're behind on their mortgage. And they're trying to figure out now what do they do. So it started with the poorest, right? We're disenfranchised and hurt, and now we're going down or up on the economic ladder, whichever way you want to look at it. So this is the reason why we're concerned about year-round rentals. This is why we're concerned about adding to the inventory and making sure that we have enough housing and the right kind of housing so that people can have the opportunity to move into units that they can afford. And like Christy said, 82% of our homes are single-family homes. We don't need any more single-family homes, right? We don't need any more individual housing units on a parcel. We need to be really focused on how can we add multifamily, whether it's an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, a duplex, something. We need to be thinking about incremental change as well as bigger projects and allowing those bigger projects to come online. Because I can tell you, we are losing our locals. Right? You read in the paper about what happens in New York City where someone comes in and an investor comes in, right, and buys up an apartment building and displaces everybody and everyone's up in arms because you're losing the culture and you're losing the people and you're losing the vibrancy and the fabric of that community. That's happening to us. It's just happening one house at a time so you don't see it. But we see it in our office every single day. We have literally hundreds of people coming in that cannot afford to stay here, that built this Cape Cod, that built our economy, that built our community. Yes, it's beautiful here. I live here. I've lived here for 20 years. I am very much, an environmentalist, a tree hugger. I lived in Santa Cruz, California. I'm like the most tree hugger person you can ever meet, right? But the reality is, we don't live here because of it's beautiful. We live here because of the people. The people are what make Cape Cod special. You know, I work in communities around the state as well because we have some contracts and are part of some organizations that are statewide. And everybody envies us on Cape Cod because we're so collaborative. I can pick up the phone and call any of my colleagues and they will come and help me problem solve, figure things out, work collaboratively. Other areas, they're fighting for territory and they're fighting with each other and they don't have that collaborative spirit, right? I raised 3 daughters here. We spent $25,000 a year on their education. Taxpayers, not we, because I work at a nonprofit, right? We taxpayers spent $25,000 a year. They go to Nauset. It's expensive. We invested $200,000 in my daughter's education. Taxpayers, not one of them can afford to come back here and live. What Mark said, making sure that they want to stay, creating an environment that they can afford and they want to come back and contribute to. We have to start thinking not just about this moment, but about the next moment and the next couple of years and what's happening for the next generation. Or we're going to be like Nantucket. Nantucket's the canary in the coal mine, right? They have to buy housing for their teachers. They have to buy housing for their firefighters and their police officers. So we're gonna pay at some point. It's just when and how. So yes, there's apartments in the pipeline. Yes, this is for multifamily, right? There are units coming online, but not nearly to the number that we see and that we need. In the rental housing study that we did, there is a wait list of 10,000 people for affordable rentals. 10,000 individuals. There's no duplication here. It's mind-boggling, the need and the demand. And so yes, why do we want market rate? Why are we for market rate year-round housing? Because that brings on natural affordability, not just capital A deed-restricted affordability, but there's natural affordability in the marketplace. Smaller units rent for less, ones that aren't of higher quality rent for less. But right now you have small, crappy rentals that are renting at the highest price possible. That gives no one any opportunity or movement or options in the marketplace. And that's not healthy and that's not sustainable. Because people don't make decisions that will hurt themselves. People make decisions that they think are in their best interest. And at some point, when someone is 26 or 30 or 35 or 45 or whatever age, and they realize that they only make $50,000 a year, and there's no place for them to live, guess what? They're gonna leave. It's not a secret. Any one of us would do it. They're gonna leave. And then what? We're gonna get them back? How? How are you gonna incentivize them to get them back? Or you're gonna think your high school students are gonna stay and they're gonna, it's faulty thinking. We have to be thinking now about how to add the inventory so they stay and we're making an investment in them. Or we're gonna all just age in place here and be looking at each other in another 20 years wishing we would have done something. So, you know, we're supposed to be doing forecasting. Bert, this is for you, right? I don't know. What can we expect, right? The affordability gap is going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to lose our year-round rentals because right now there are no. I talked to Ryan Castle, who's the head of the realtors, yesterday. They have no idea where the houses are going to come from to sell, right? In 2021, they had a 20% increase in the number of homes that sold. We think, and I'm making an assumption here, but my assumption is that 20% increase was likely an investor who had a year-round rental or a couple year-round rentals and had been in the market for 10, 15 years and decided they were at the height of the market and so they should sell, right? I mean, that's just basic logic. If your stocks were at the highest price, you'd sell them, right? Like if you had an investment, you would sell it at the highest price, not knowing, oh, is this going to change, right? And that brought in what we're seeing on these year-round locals now who make more money and who are, going to stay living here year-round. So we're seeing a shift in the way that our housing is used and who's living in it. We're going to continue to lose the year-round rentals. We're going to continue to see pressure for wage increases. We're going to have to pay for it somehow because people can't afford to live here. I just had today one of our mid-managers just got a job at another organization that's paying $15,000 more. So now I have to make a decision: am I going to counter? Am I going to let her go and try to find somebody else to work at what we were paying her? I'm not unique in this problem. Everyone out here, right? You all have to think about this. So that if I'm giving one a $15,000 increase, am I giving everybody a $15,000? It's just the math doesn't exactly work like that. We can't give everybody a pay raise to try to keep them and try to keep our economy in place. It just doesn't work. So really, anybody who makes under $100,000 is going to become kind of a unicorn on Cape Cod. Like we're all going to be vying to try to bring them into our organizations. And so that means, goods and services are going to go up. And like I said, we're going to lose the people that we love, and we're going to lose our friends, and we're going to lose our community and the fabric of what Cape Cod is and why we moved here. So now is the time to get involved, and now is the time to really care. And there's been a lot of hand-wringing about housing and about the need for housing, and a lot of people talk, oh, we need housing, but not there, but here, and we need that kind of housing, but not this kind of housing. Okay, we need to use facts and data. We need to decide on what's the criteria that we are using to evaluate a piece of property or an area, and we need to start making very strategic and swift decisions that can bring housing online quickly. Because all that pipeline that I showed you, those are years out. Those are 3, 4, 5 years out. Nothing's happening fast unless we get individuals involved in it through ADUs, clearing the path for multifamily so that people can build on existing lots. Those are the only ways that we're going to be able to try to shift the market and shift what we're seeing happening right now. And so I invite you to go to housingtoprotectcapecod.org and get involved. That's where we have our facts and information, and we're amassing people to try to help us get the message out. Regular people like you and me. Like these aren't people that we don't know. These are people that we all know and that we all need here in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a friend who's actually leaving one office to run for another. I'm really happy to get him as a speaker here for my first economic forecast with you folks. And also as someone I look up to because I essentially have to. State Representative Tim Whalen. Now, Tim didn't have a PowerPoint presentation. He was going to do some TikTok videos, but I decided perhaps next year, once we can edit those down. The stage is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see y'all.
So when Marty got a hold of me yesterday and asked me if I could put together some sort of a slide presentation, my legislative aide is in Europe this week, and my technology skills put me about 1/2 of a step out of the cave. So you're going to get what you're going to get. So, and I apologize for that in advance. Marty, thank you very much, and thank you to your team for inviting me to come here and speak before you. I look around here, it's a room full of friends. I've gotten to know many of you through my career in politics. I won't identify whom, but I also got to know a few of you through my career as a state trooper. Those records are permanent, and they're available through Corey. I also want to thank the people who were here presenting earlier. Alyssa, Christy, thank you very much. Did Mark leave already? Oh, there's Mark in the back. Thank you for the cooperation and the close work of you and our municipal partners here in Barnstable, our municipal partners in Yarmouth as well. State government only floats so well and so far as our cooperative levels across different levels of government will take us. So before I begin my remarks, one other thank you. Bert, where are you, Bert? Oh, there you are, Bert. Thank you for the cookies. My wife's going to find my cookie in the glove box of the car, which I'm going to store away as a snack. And then she's going to say, where the hell did you get this from? I'm going to say, I got it from Bert. Before I begin our remarks, I just want to note that we had an auspicious occasion. A notable piece of legislation was passed in the legislature recently, that being Nero's bill, after the tragedy that occurred here in our community in Centerville with the loss of Yarmouth Police Sergeant Sean Gannon. The bill was passed to right a wrong that existed for too long in state law. Steve Exaros, my close friend and my colleague, he's been a friend of mine for years, was able to shepherd that bill through, but I also want to give credit to the gentleman, he was just here earlier, but he had to go off to a staff meeting, Will Crocker. Will was basically if Steve was the father of getting this bill passed, Will was the grandfather of getting this bill passed. And I'm not saying that because he's older than Steve, but because he's not that much older. So thank you, Will Crocker, and thank you, Steve Exaros, for getting that through. That meant so much to our community. We love our police canines. Okay, so I have some prepared remarks here, and this is my first time delivering remarks wearing my cheaters, because I've finally given up, and I have to wear these now in order to be able to read. So bear with me here as I try and read through my prepared remarks. And I have to tell you the truth, I prepared these remarks. I'm a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. I have a lot of access to documents, to economic forecasts and everything, and these were all based off of that. I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a state trooper by career, as we discussed earlier. Many of you know that from the time you spent with me in the Gray Bar Hotel. But this is my attempt at being an economist. So in a joint statement announcing the consensus revenue forecast for fiscal year 2023, the Secretary of Admin and Finance, Mike Heffernan, along with the House and Senate chairs of Ways and Means, Aaron Michaelowitz and Michael Rodericks, have projected that state tax revenues in the upcoming year will reach $36.915 billion. This number represents a 2.7% anticipated growth over the FY 2022 projected revenue of $35.948 billion. The FY 22 figure does reflect a $1.548 billion upgrade to revenue forecast based upon higher than anticipated revenue collections so far in the current year to date. Typically, it's been my experience in my 6 years on Ways and Means that we will conservatively anticipate that in the upcoming year we're going to see an increase in tax revenue of 2%. We were extremely conservative during COVID, particularly when COVID first hit us. And what we surprisingly saw in FY21 was we saw an increase in revenue. We were coming in over benchmark almost every single month. FY 2022, we continue to be coming in on the monthly reports over benchmark month after month after month. There have only been a few months that we haven't exceeded benchmark, and that's really good. That's a good sign for our statewide economy. We are seeing unemployment leveling off after falling fast most of last year. As of the end of December, it was hovering around 5.4%. Most of our business leaders in this room can offer their own firsthand experiences, and I know that you can, about not only the drop in unemployment, but the extreme difficulty many of you are having in finding employees who are candidates for employment. Personal income in the state has risen approximately across the nation has risen approximately 0.5%, but disposable personal income has decreased by 0.3%, according to the Beacon Hill Institute's November reporting. The projected revenue number that I mentioned earlier, it's slightly less than that which was offered by the Beacon Hill Institute during their consensus revenue testimony that they gave before Ways and Means in December. And in my opinion, it continues to reflect our conservative forecasting since the onset of the pandemic. It should be noted that there are some pretty significant statutorily required off-budget transfers that are mandated by existing state law, and these total $7.132 billion. There's going to be included in there $3.74 billion transferred to the state's pension fund, with the goal that by the year of 2036 we'll eliminate our pension liability and that the state pension system will be fully solvent. That's quite a remarkable feat given where we were in 2009 when they first started tackling this, and there was a multi-billion dollar, I think it was somewhere in the area of $60 or $70 billion pension liability that was going to be transferred to the taxpayer en masse unless they started chipping away at it. And I also have to say that the state pension fund right now, the last time I checked, it's floating somewhere around, I believe, $104 billion. They've been investing very, very well, and the stock market has obviously done very well over the past years too. The state also has to transfer $1.325 billion to the MBTA and $1.165 billion to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. We see the benefit of those dollars going to the Massachusetts School Building Authority right here in our own community. All you have to do is go down to Yarmouth and take a look at the new middle school that they're building there, the construction project that was improved for the Nauset Regional Schools, Cape Tech, just to name a few. Going around. And I was talking with some folks here earlier about some other school building projects that they want to see done, not just in my first Barnstable district, but also around the Cape. So that's where that money goes to. It's no secret that in the past year, the Commonwealth has amassed nearly $10 billion in a temporary reserve. And I've spoken to several chambers of commerce on this, and this has always been a healthy discussion and a topic on what are we going to do with this $10 billion temporary reserve. Well, about half of that number represents unspent federal monies from the ARPA and from the CARES Act, and the other half is a result of significantly higher than predicted tax revenues. When I was mentioning earlier about how we're predicting 2.3% increase in tax revenues that the state takes in, and what we actually realized, I think, was it last year we took in, it was somewhere around like 10 or 11%. Might have even been a little bit higher. I'm just trying to go by rote memory. As the legislature continues to solicit public input on the further dissemination of these monies, because we've only disseminated a little less than half of that number, a notable portion of this must go statutorily to the state's rainy day savings fund, which I think we all appreciate because Massachusetts has one of the most robust rainy day funds in the nation, and that helps us quite obviously with our bond rating and also helps provide us the cushion that we'll have if we fall on significantly hard times. We had very little drawdown on that rainy day fund even during the height of COVID. I do not anticipate that you will see these remaining funds being spent on large infrastructure projects. I heard Mark was talking earlier about infrastructure. The federal infrastructure bill that was recently passed in Washington is projected to bring several billion more dollars to our Commonwealth, and legislative leadership is more inclined to keep these monies for other things on hand. And out of the monies that we had on hand, the $10 billion that we had on hand, the asks that we were receiving from business communities, from healthcare and every other interest, it was totaling somewhere in the area of $80 billion. So the other question that I hear repeatedly when we talk about the federal infrastructure money that I have to address right up front is I have no update for you whatsoever on the bridges. We know that the bridges are likely going to be funded. I was at a press conference with Senator Markey last year, I think it was last August, it was hot as hell. And he had mentioned that he was going to make it his number one priority to get the funding for the bridges. And the Commonwealth, through the leadership of Representative Sarah Peake, we were able to secure a $400 million bond authorization, which would be the state's input, the state's skin in the game, so to speak, to take care of the approaches to the bridges on either side of the bridge so we could build new access roads. One of the things that many of you know they've been talking about is the on-ramp that comes up to the bridge, to the Sagamore. That's the bane of our existence right there at the Christmas tree. that they're talking about bringing that back about maybe a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile and letting the traffic merge happen back there to reduce the crowding that we have that goes on at the bridge. So just over 1 month ago, Governor Baker filed his FY23 budget proposal. It's $48.5 billion. Many people say, well, geez, well, where's the gap? Because the revenue is going to be 36.915, but the governor's bill is going to be $48.5 billion. How do you bridge that gap between those two numbers? Well, a large part of that comes from Medicare reimbursements, because the feds have to reimburse the state for that. So in his budget proposal, it's a far-reaching budget proposal which includes a comprehensive tax relief plan that would provide $700 million in tax breaks to low-income families, seniors, and citizens at large by including the following. It looks to double the senior citizen circuit breaker credit, increase the rental deduction cap from $3,000 to $5,000, which will be very helpful for our renters if we can get that through. It looks to double the dependent care credit from $480 to $480 for one qualifying individual and up to $960 for two or more. It looks to double the estate tax threshold. This is important, particularly down here when you look at the value of our homes. Anything over $1 million, the estate tax kicks in, and it doesn't begin at $1 million. It then zeroes you back to the first dollar. It looks to change the short-term capital gains tax rate to 5%, which would align Massachusetts with most other states in the nation. The budget includes about $591 million in new Chapter 70, which is for our K-12 public schools, spending to fully fund the Commonwealth's obligations under the Student Opportunities Act. This represents an increase of $58 million. It also includes an increase of $58 million to the RAFT program, or the Rental Assistance for Families in Transition line item. That's a proposed, I believe it's 264% increase. It's a big increase. And changes to update the MRVP, the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, to better utilize mobile vouchers and to increase funding by 223% in that line item as well. With Cape Cod's critical housing challenges, I ask you to contact your state rep and your state senator to ask them to prioritize housing and support these items in the governor's H2 budget. I'm going to give you a pro tip. You don't have to call me. I'm already on board. But make sure you call all the other reps, because we need to support, to Alyssa's points when she was up here speaking earlier, we have to support housing. I mean, that's without a question, I believe, right now our #1 issue down here. I could continue to highlight the details of these projections and budget proposals and put half the room to sleep, I believe, in the process. I think I've already done that. But you didn't come here to watch paint dry or to watch grass grow. At the end of the day, we have some hopeful signs in our local economic future. The vacation rental market is booming, and that means tourists will be here soon and spending their monies experiencing all that our beautiful Cape Cod has to offer. The resilient spirit of our hardworking business community will again be on display during our busy season, which is just coming up right now, and I look forward to hearing from many of you, as I did last year, how, geez, you know what, Tim? This is probably the best year that we ever had. Really looking forward to hearing that. And I think we can all start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. For me anyways, and I don't work in the business community, but speaking to people in the Mid-Cape area that I represent, the Cape Cod St. Patrick's Day, which is this weekend, the Cape Cod St. Patrick's Parade, which is this weekend, seems to represent a little reawakening of the Cape. We get some people down here spending money, and after this, the weekends start to get busy, and then after that, when it gets a little warmer, it starts to get busy during the middle of the week, and then game on. But we also share many, many concerns, right? Is COVID finally in our rearview mirror? How will the supply chain issues affect my bottom line and my ability to do business? You folks know better than anyone how much the cost of your goods have gone up and how difficult it is to order products, and you are the folks that worry about passing that expense on to your customers and how ultimately that's going to affect the business you have coming in your door. Where am I going to find workers, and where are they going to live when they get here? What about the price of fuel? That's going to affect everything. And with everything going on over in the Ukraine, what ultimately is going to be the ceiling on the price of gas and the price of diesel, the price of energy in general? These are all questions that we're going to have to watch play out locally and internationally. As a 6-year member of the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, I am really only in the position here today to offer to you that the state of the Commonwealth's economy is very strong. I fully anticipate that for the 3rd straight year that we will continue to see monthly revenue collections above benchmark, and that the state will continue to reinvest these extra monies into areas that will improve our Cape Cod community. We won't always agree on everything, but that's government 101. When I mentioned earlier about $10 billion being spent, every dollar being spent 8 times over by the requests that were coming in the door, that would be a strong example of that. For our friends here who have interest in municipal government, you already well know that the governor's budget does propose another increase to the unrestricted general government aid line item, which will benefit our cities and towns. And he also proposes level funding the Chapter 90 municipal aid for roads and bridges, again at $200 million, which means Barnstable will continue to get the same number according to, they use a formula based on the number of people who work in the town, the number of people who live in the town, and the miles of roads. Let's see, I also wanted to add, wastewater is going to continue to be a concern. I mean, Barnstable right now is kind of at the tip of the spear and leading the way. And I mean, you guys, Mark, are setting a tremendous example that I'd like to see the rest of the towns here on the Cape follow. But right next door you have Yarmouth. Yarmouth has, originally we had the DHY, Dennis Howard Yarmouth agreement that was going to go forward. And looks like that fell apart. I was the one that wrote that bill and got the governor to sign it, but it fell apart, and it's up to the towns to determine what it is they want to do. But it's going to be interesting to watch any agreements that may go forward between the town of Barnstable and the town of Yarmouth. At the end of the day, the town of Yarmouth has, they're hearing the clock ticking because they're going to be resurfacing Route 28 through Yarmouth. We've been putting that off over and over and over again, and we're reaching a point that John Gulliver, the Mass DOT administrator, is saying we've got to get this done. And if Mass DOT, if Yarmouth can get their projects going, at least on the Route 28 corridor, Mass DOT is willing to put their pipe into the road at no cost. If they don't meet the deadline and Mass DOT paves the road, then there is a 5-year moratorium on when they can crack the road open. And if they do, then the town of Yarmouth has to pay to resurface the road from curb to curb. So that's going to be something that's going to affect all of us going forward. What's going to happen with the remainder of this CARES Act funding? What's going to happen with the funding coming in from the federal government under the federal infrastructure program? That's all going to remain to be seen, and that's all going to seriously impact everybody here in this room. Speaker Mariano put together a working group. It's being led by Representative Danielle Gregoire, my friend from Marlborough. And Danielle, I've already had a meeting with her. She's had a meeting with a number of us representatives where we could go over projects in our district. So my district is, as we know, actually I'm just over on the other side of Route 132, right? This is Kippy's side of 132. I actually have the other side of 132 heading east. So I have a vested interest in Hyannis, Barnstable, the Village, Comaquid. But all this is going to be going into Kip Diggs district with redistricting coming up. So one of the things that I brought up about, because they're really looking to get these projects lined up and ready to go, shovel-ready projects to get, so that like we get the money in, we're going to get these projects done right away. Broadband. Broadband is going to be huge. So we keep talking about broadband, we keep talking about wastewater, and other little things like dredging. Dredging is going to be important for a lot of our businesses here too. So we have an awful lot that's going to be ahead of us. I just want to offer one thing is, one of the most important things in housing, and many of you here know this already, but I can't help but reemphasize this, which is the majority of the issue, or I shouldn't say the majority, but a large part of the issue in solving our local housing crisis, it starts with local government. That's where the rubber meets the road. Barnstable's done an exceptional job. They've really done an exceptional job. But the Commonwealth has given municipalities tools that they can use. We just did a zoning reform bill last year, and that is going to make it easier for towns to adjust their zoning to bring in housing. We continue to put a bunch of money into our towns to help build affordable housing. So you have to keep the pressure on. If you don't live in this town, you have to keep the pressure on your municipal officials to make sure that they're looking to make sure that the zoning maps, if they have to be adjusted to increase production of affordable housing, that it's done so. And then the other thing too, and I've been fighting this fight with some of my towns, and they've come around excellently, is how are they dispersing their CPA funds? We all know how the CPA funds work, right? Affordable housing, open space, and historic preservation. One of my towns that I had, not Barnstable, one of my towns was putting 80% for years, 80% into open space preservation. And I've been beating them to death over it, and they finally started to come around, and they're putting more of that money into affordable housing. I'm gonna keep beating them over the head until it's completely flipped, and 80% of those CPA funds are going into affordable housing. The gentleman that sits in front of me in the House is, his name's Michael Connolly. He's a representative from Cambridge. He is a Democrat socialist. He could not be any further apart from me politically, but he's a nice guy and he's my friend. And you know what we both seriously agree upon? 80% of CPA funds going to affordable housing production. So please keep the pressure on your municipal officials to make sure that they're doing their part. Barnstable is, I can tell you that right up front. Barnstable has been excellent, but I know that some of you folks here who live in the room live in Sandwich, Mashpee, Brewster, Orleans, elsewhere. Please make sure that your town's doing its part, because that is truly, truly where the rubber meets the road. It doesn't begin as being a Commonwealth issue, it begins as being a municipal issue. And that affordable housing issue is the most, in my opinion, the most important issue that we face. So I thank you very much. I've gone on way too long, and not everybody is asleep. That's great.
Next up is Bert Tallerman, the president of Cape Cod 5, the new president of Cape Cod 5. Thank you so much.
All right, Marty, thank you for it's a little bit of a premature promotion. You know, it's not until May, but you know, I'm still in my probationary period. Good morning, everybody. I had no idea that I'd have the kind of opportunity to go last after all those fine speakers. What I'm going to try to do is pull together, some national trends and maybe some global trends, and then, see how it all ties together, and then close with some opportunities for, our region. And so I'm going to start with kind of the standard disclaimer here that, none of this should be viewed as financial advice. And these are my own views. These aren't necessarily kind of official Cape Cod 5 views, right? And, kind of as a banker, I also try to stay away from predicting the future. And, kind of that great American philosopher Yogi Berra had a very good line about trying to predict the future. So I do suspect that a bunch of the things that I will share aren't going to be, big news to anybody, because again, it's all been in the news a lot, and at the same time, hopefully, kind of pulling it together in this way quickly, because I know it's been a long morning, will be helpful. And I will also kind of add that, obviously, since I pulled a bunch of this together. The world has totally changed. I mean, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a total global game changer in every respect. And, this is going to have significant global economic ramifications. And, too early to gauge exactly what those will be. I'm going to touch on a couple of guesses. And, but, certain to, no doubt that defense spending is going to go way up, kind of in the U.S. as well as in Europe, and again, that affects everything. So we'll start with the last couple of years, and this is a little bit of an eye test here, but as you all sadly know, we've been in a pandemic for the last few years. The federal government has put $5.3 trillion into the economy through a variety of programs. Most notably, the PPP program, economic stimulus payments, expanded unemployment benefit, and a longer list here. And at that same time, the Federal Reserve has pushed rates close to zero and used their purchasing power to add about $5 trillion in bonds to their balance sheet. And so the government has worked very hard to keep rates low. They've significantly increased the money supply. From a basic standpoint, a trillion is a really big number, right? I mean, it's 12 zeros. If you, a billion seconds is 31.7 years. So, a trillion seconds is 31,700 years. That's a very, very long time. So these are massive numbers, right? And so for the first time, with this increased money supply, we have inflation. I mean, we haven't seen inflation at these levels in 40 years. And really, it shouldn't be significantly, shouldn't come as a huge surprise to anybody, because when you significantly increase the money supply, you will get inflation. And again, you look at these numbers, the inflation is certainly here. And now, of course, the Federal Reserve is trying to thread the needle of how do you, contain inflation without slowing down the economy. And then now on top of that, we have the Russia-Ukraine ramifications of that. And if anyone was reading, kind of the Fed talking yesterday, that, or the people who watch the Fed, the likelihood of, a 50 basis point increase in March has come down significantly. And now we're talking about potentially less Fed action at a time when, according to, what I'm going to show you next, I think, inflation is going to continue to be real. But first, we've heard a lot about housing this morning. These are national numbers. So, the median cost of a house across the country up, almost $100,000 in the last 4 years. And this past year, home prices increased more than at any point in time since the post-World War II inflationary years. And if we look at the divergence here between the increase in home prices and the increase in wages, that's pretty significant. You can certainly also argue that the inflation's been played a part in the stock market. The 5-year return is almost double historical returns. And, we've all obviously read about the pandemic-induced supply chain challenges driving up prices further. And again, we've experienced a couple of years of very strong demand. And then we've also touched on labor. And, what we've seen happen with unemployment. Unemployment obviously spiked to 14.7% at the beginning of the pandemic and is now down below 4%. And of course, that's only part of the story, because we also have labor force participation. And labor force participation is lower than it was pre-pandemic. A lot of speculation about what's driving that. I mean, it's driven by early retirements. It's also driven by a lot of folks who are choosing not to work for a variety of reasons. And lack of childcare is cited as a significant issue in that. And of course, we look at, cost of childcare is among the highest in the country in Massachusetts. So, and then, kind of on top of, increased money supply, goods shortages, labor shortages, kind of all contributing to increased pricing, driving, inflation right now. Now, we already had rising oil prices. The geopolitical crisis in the Ukraine, further drives that up. Russia has, 10% of the world's oil reserves. They're a huge exporter of natural gas. And then a bunch of other, important minerals that come out of Ukraine and Russia: palladium, plutonium, corn, variety of other important commodity resources, all going, way up here. And so, for the first time since the early 2000s, we're seeing oil at, over $100 a gallon. And again, that drives prices as well. Because oil and gas affect, kind of almost everything. So we're going to go back a second here. So anyway, now that I've, kind of thoroughly depressed you, we'll talk about, kind of high inflation, supply shortages, labor constraints. I'm going to say that, these are they're economic headwinds. They're real, and at the same time, business finds a way to evolve and be successful. That's part of the capitalist system, and it's painful, but again, it's part of the evolution. And we have kind of very strong base of business, and I'm going to flip to kind of the opportunities here, and it does come back to a lot of what we heard from all the other speakers. We live and work in a highly desirable part of the world, right? And you think of the well-documented areas where we have opportunities for investment that will continue to drive the desirability of this region. You might have seen there was a thing that came out over the weekend. I think the town of Barnstable ticked as one of the top luxury markets in the country. Again, we're on the map in a very different way, and so this means we have more opportunity to solve kind of some of our challenges, and our challenges are opportunities. And so, housing, when you look at the supply and demand dynamics of housing at this point, yes, there's a need for more housing. It's a huge opportunity. It's a big driver of our local economy. It supports year-round residents who supply the important jobs and support the seasonal economy. And again, you look at the dynamics that drive housing right now, we have a huge opportunity. The wastewater infrastructure, we got a decades-long, multi-million-dollar investment that's going to take place in our community. It's going to upgrade the infrastructure. It's going to help provide ongoing jobs, the multiplier effect that goes with all those jobs, and ultimately it supports, investment in housing in areas where that's appropriate, and at the same time it protects the quality of our environment and the water, right? And then coastal resilience, another, area of future investment and opportunity to protect our economy, to protect our residents, and to support the area. And again, it's an opportunity for us to be innovative and, be a place that, again, does all those things to improve our environment, and it involves investment, and it involves jobs, and ultimately, again, we have that opportunity. And then, last but not least, our environment is our core asset, and the reason we all, choose to be here, and, making sure we invest in that as well, right? Whether it's some of the things Mark talked about, in investing in how people enjoy the outdoors, whether it's investing in the beaches, the bike paths, hiking trails, etc. So, I think we have lots of opportunities here. We again, it all comes down to being in a desirable area that has the opportunity to invest. And there are no easy solutions here, and at the same time, if we collaborate, which I heard earlier, we can work together to solve these opportunities, not get overly focused on one issue, because they all depend on one another. They're all tied together, and that's it. So challenges, yes, tough, challenging world. Everything's going to cost more in the short run, and at the same time, we live in a great place, and we have lots and lots of opportunities. So thank you.